Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Well, I just got done putting one up over on Patreon about circles of friends. It's another, I don't need this, about another lesson from the Godfather. So any of you who are over on there on Patreon, you'll be able to see that. And that brings me to the major announcement of the night, and I'm about halfway down through Lone Star. That's the major announcement, that Lone Star is back in my local liquor store. Howdy to all you down in Texas. I said it over there. I say it here. I'm sure Rob is happy. And for those of you who don't know Lone Star is my second favorite beer. The first is Schlitz, then Lone Star, and then Pabst. And I know you all have given me a lot of suggestions, and I'm going to get to those. But since I got Lone Star back in, I'm back at it. And maybe a lot of you don't know that Lone Star used to be brewed here in Kansas City, or by a company here in Kansas City. So I'm happy about that. So I'm about halfway down through this. I'll try to finish this with you all while I do this video. A lot of things are coming. Oh, what I should say before I get into the meat of it, and for the couple of people who every now and then say, get to the point. You have a 10-minute intro. Okay, I'll get to the point. The world is ending Thursday morning. How's that? Okay, now that we're done with that silliness. For those of you who are new, I want to welcome everyone. We've had a lot of people join here recently. I've heard from a lot of you all, and it's great to hear from you. I say that this is probably the smartest bunch of commenters on YouTube, because I read every one, and I read some from others, and I certainly don't disparage the commenters on any other channel. But I tell you, if you're here for a while and you read the comments, which you should, you're going to find that this is a smart bunch of people. And they get even deeper over on Patreon. What's Patreon? Patreon is my Patreon channel. Everything that I put up on YouTube is on Patreon, but extra stuff, just like what I said, the one that I shot earlier, Lessons from the Godfather. The link is down below, as are the links to my books, the Stonemont series, for anybody who is really interested in, societal collapse, EMP, CME, the rebuilding of society, how to get through the worst situations. I wrote them really as a very long-form, total plan of preparedness, and what I suggest everybody do. So I think that's enough of the housekeeping. That's kind of like every time you go to church, right? And the pastor has all these announcements, what's the meetings on Wednesdays, and we're looking for volunteers here and all that. And you're going, well, let's get to the sermon. Okay, now, the message of the day. The country is crumbling, and I know that everybody understands the problems that our country is having. And we've talked about many of the problems. Now, I don't go into a lot of the detail on this channel. Other channels do, and I think that's great. I don't have the personality to just go and hammer on those individual problems, like this happened today and that happened yesterday and this is going on. I figured that everybody knows those things, and probably most of you all watch other channels, and so you've already, if you haven't kept up on it on your own, which you probably have, you've gotten a review from the other channels. I tend to come at things a little bit wider perspective. Doesn't mean a better perspective, just means a wider perspective, like, okay, what do we need to keep in mind, and what should we do? How should we prepare on this? There's been discussions, and we've talked about it here. What's it going to look like when this country goes down the tubes? Because I, like many of you, feel that it is. There's no coming back from this. I do not believe that the United States continues on the way it has been a country in the past. And I've had people ask me, well, then why do you continue to suggest that we work politically? Okay, that's a fair question that maybe I'll get to. I've answered it before, but maybe I'll get to it again. But the question that I want to talk about tonight is how does it look when this thing falls apart? And excuse me, I'm outside. My nose is itching. People have talked about division, fragmentation, a split like during the War of the 1860s, a balkanization, a rural versus urban, a whatever. All of these things have been discussed, and even I've talked about a fragmentation, because it's not simple at all. We have been divided, at least as a people. That doesn't mean that each individual necessarily has fallen prey to this, but as a country, the country has been divided because of what has been fed by the media and the government, to dislike this group and hate that group, and pitting one person or one group against another, and in some cases those are legitimate, because we have groups that are diametrically opposed in their values. Okay, so I have nothing in common with a person who is diametrically opposed to me in matters of morality and of basic principles and ideals. Okay, there is no common ground there that I can find, nor do I wish to. I do not compromise with people that I find to be, with people that I wouldn't let in my garage, let alone my house. Okay, so many of those divisions, they're valid. It's not like, well, we need to find the common ground, and we'll find that people are we have more in common than we have different. Well, maybe that used to be true. Maybe 40 years ago that used to be true, but things have progressed along that ideological line. Ideological idiots on one side, us on the other, right? And I'm sorry if that offends. No, I'm not. It's gotten too far, and when people want to have threatened to say that we need to be put in jail or arrested if we don't do certain things, that they want us to do, and I don't mean committing crimes. That's where I don't care to try to work it out with those people. They've said what they want to do with me. Well, okay, you've drawn the line. I accept your line, and we'll see what happens. Well, the things has gotten so messy. I do not see this country as fragmenting or balkanizing or anything. It's going to crumble. In my opinion, it's going to crumble. Okay, you look at anything, and look at a cake. We're not talking about slicing that cake up, right, into this piece believes this way and this piece believes another way, and so we've got a nice 12 different pieces, and they're all the same, and they can be their own pieces and think different ways and do different things, but we can still be all part of the same cake. No, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that cake is going to crumble. It's like when our kids were young, one of the things that Kelly would do is she made fancy birthday cakes for the kids. She'd make a nice big cake of whatever they wanted, a minion or a superhero or a fairy princess or whatever, a nice big one, and then she'd make them. This is up until they were about, well, it was when they were, as long as they were in a high chair, so a couple of years, I guess. And then she'd make another small cake for them, and after they blew out their one or two candles, and then she started slicing the large cake very nicely for the adults and older kids. Then she'd put this cake in front of the birthday kid on his little tray in front of his, of him in his high chair, and just let him eat it with his hands, or her, and they just dig in and and it'd be all over their face, and they'd be laughing and be in their eyes and their mouth and their nose, and it was cute. I mean, it was cute, but it was a mess. And that's really how I see this country going now. That these special interests and the groups that want us to be at each other and keep throwing so many things. And you know that. I mean, it's like the old, remember the quote by Chesty Puller when he said, the enemy is in front of us, he's behind us, he's to our right, he's to our left, he can't get away now, right? Well, they are throwing so many things at us at the same time that you hardly know which way to look. Well, anywhere, any direction you turn, there's something to fight, right? And that's really kind of the mess that's being presented to us, in my opinion. It's just like that kid going in there to that cake with their bare hands and talons and going, rah, rah. Okay? There is no putting that cake back together again. And I don't think there's any putting this country back together again. So people ask, and I guess I'll get to that here. People have asked me, and almost accusatory, sometimes getting pretty snarky in the comments, and I'll say right now, when they do, after, depending on how snarky they are, sometimes I dump them the first time. It's just not nice. I say, be nice, you know. You can make your point in a respectful way. If you can't, I don't want you around. And I made a video on that the other day. But 99.997% of the people here are great, just like the survival rate of something else we know, right? But anyway, they have asked me, well, if you believe the country is going to pot, and again, I'm gonna use the word crumbling, then why do you continue to suggest being involved in the political process or in voting or anything like that? And the answer is very simple. I don't believe that it can have an effect nationally as long as there are, how should I say this? As long as there are illegitimate elections. Okay? As long as there are problems with the elections, maybe I should say that. As long as there's some doubt about that. I don't think that there's hope. The only hope there is for, you know, some of these laws to be passed, for the voting to be tightened up, for us to be able to trust the vote. Until we can, there's really nothing that I think can be done. But the thing is, the reason that I continue to suggest staying involved in the political process, which means, it doesn't mean just voting. I think that's what too many people misunderstand. They think that voting is it. Voting is a very small part of it. Voting is just that final little jab you give. Politics is influence. And it's kind of the subject of the one that I just put up over on Patreon, Circles of Friends. It's talking to people. It's influencing people. It's swaying people. It's changing the way that some people think. And anybody out there who says, you can't change the way people think, they're all, you know, get a grip, man. Get a grip, because you're wrong. Or you live in too small of a circle. Get out more. Make more contacts. You'll find this world is full of people who are just waiting for somebody to convince them to believe in something. Okay, the other side has done that very well. That's why they win. Okay, now there's a chance that we could see a big sea change coming up. I don't know. I don't base this on any guarantee of that. What I'm saying is this: that your working politics is about influencing people, talking to people, getting them to think like you, and then influencing your local representatives. I don't care if it's a school board member, a city council, a county commissioner, a state senator or rep, or even your U.S. rep or senator. They respond to certain things. Above all else, they want to be reelected. Above all else, above more than their next breath, they want to be reelected. They're addicted to the power. Now, there are a few who do it for the right reason, and mostly they don't last long, okay? But this is why the representatives need to be controlled by the people, okay? That's the way it was set up to be. They are not supposed to control us. We're supposed to control them. Since they won't go along with the game, and since they think that they're better than us once they get in there, we have to do what we can to regain that control, and there are ways to do it. For anybody out there who doesn't think there is, I'm going to tell you right now, it's only because you're not willing to try. You're not willing to do it, or you don't know how. And so instead of putting in the work or wanting to learn how, you just go, it can't be done. Okay. Well, if you think it can't be done, you're right. You can't do it. Okay. So if this thing is crumbling, my point, as I've made it before, is that something's going to come out the other side, right? I don't know if it's that kid going to smash it back into a ball of cake or something. There are going to be so many different, if you think the whole thing's come tumbling down, and the people who kind of basically think the way we do here are all going to, move forward in lockstep and arm in arm and go back to create what we believe is going to be good. Now, that's not what's going to happen at all, because in my opinion, okay, if you can convince me otherwise, I'd love you to do it. But in my opinion, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to have little pockets of people feeling differently and getting into squabbles and look what it took to get the Constitution together and the Declaration. If you're not familiar with that, that's a great history lesson. Excuse me just a second. I've been talking. I'm not used to talking this much or this fast. Most people, if you're new here, I usually talk a lot slower than this. So excuse me a moment. To the great state of Texas, which I've always just considered to be a large Kansas. The people are a lot alike once you get out of Johnson County. So we're going to see a lot of separate little functioning, what would you call them, pods, of people. One good thing is, if the country crumbles, it's going to be a lot more difficult for a central authority to control it. And so if this happens, you want to have some influence on what's going on locally. Now, local influence, even though the naysayers will say this isn't true, local influence can trump a lot of things. I didn't mean Trump as in Trump. Can trump a lot of centralized government attempts. Okay, that's why you see a lot of states reclaiming some of their states' rights. Now, this, of course, is exactly what led up to that secessionary move in the 1860s. But more and more of the people are understanding the importance of state sovereignty because they're feeling the bite and the boot of the centralized authority on their necks. And so they're starting to kind of take, there's a big move. If you're not aware of it, get aware of it and become a part of it. And they're becoming more energetic in this. If it crumbles, which I think it will, that means that your influence on your inner circle, not your inner circle is your family, and then your friends, your family, your circle of friends, and then beyond that, your local representative bodies. Your influence can do a lot to promote your welfare and to insulate you from bad things happening to you from the outside. Okay? And that's vitally important. Too many people, and I said this in the one that I just put up on Patreon, too much in the preparedness world is all about pulling in your horns, hiding, hunkering down, having plenty of stuff to keep you alive for a while, and, beans and Band-Aids and other things, and then growing your own food and just staying out of the conflict. I'm not saying that that's wrong. That's what's right for a lot of people. I have to admit that I have a failing, and that is that I like to fight. I can't stay out of a conflict. If I think that something is wrong, I have a tendency to want to do something about it. Doesn't mean that I'm better than people that want to, separate themselves from it. It's just my way. And if it's your way as well, then developing, this circle of influence around you is very important, and especially in a crumbling country. In a country that crumbles, there are great problems. I mean, it is a true societal collapse. It could go from, the violence that attends a societal collapse. It could be, all sorts of disruptions, the kind that we've talked about elsewhere. General preparedness takes care of almost all the needs, all the problems in that, okay? By not being dependent on, as I say, all of these interdependent systems over which you have no control. Being independent from those is going to put you in a very good place. And then beyond the problems that a crumbling brings, it also brings great opportunities. Now, if you're a person who looks for someone to join and looks for someone to support and looks for someone to lead you, there's not a darn thing wrong with that. That's the majority of people. Hook yourself up with people that you respect enough and like enough to follow, to be a part of. If you are a leader, understand that there are people who are looking for you. There are people who need somebody to lead them. There are people who need leadership to depend on. Okay, and if it's in your nature, accept that role. Accept it. Accept that as things crumble around you, you're going to do a lot better with a good circle of friends, a good group. And you need to be thinking about how you can build that, and that's, go watch the one on Patreon, and how then you can respond to a true crumbling of society, to where there's not a big thing here and a big thing here and a big problem over there, but there are crumbs all over the place. Little problem here, problem, all over the place. Big mess. Okay. I'm not saying that is how it's going to happen, but I say that that's how it could happen, and that's how I kind of foresee it happening. As more and more things come our way that we will not accept, and the reason that I see it being crumbs is that people have different lines in the sand. You understand what I mean? Not everybody has the same line. We're not waiting for, one thing to happen and then, okay, now we're going to stand up and argue about it. No, everybody has different. People don't get all upset at the same time. You ever been working in a place where people are all unhappy about their boss or the job or anything like that, and everybody says, you know what? If we just all quit at the same time, that'd show them, and then they'd have to change and do what we want, right? Has that ever worked? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen everybody quit at the same time except in a strike? It doesn't work because people have different lines, okay? So that's why I see a crumbling. And so there you have to be able to deal with and operate effectively within a crumbling society, a crumbling country. That means dealing with different levels of challenge all the time in different areas. You could have one area over here where things are really dire, things are really, really bad. You got to deal with that. You got a couple things over here where things are a problem but not a big problem. Well, you got to deal with all of it. Okay. And just because this one over here is huge and you gotta use a hammer on it, doesn't mean you can use a hammer on these other things, because other things might work better. Okay, does that make any sense? So anyway, I know that we're all looking at what's going to be happening in the next few months and then a year down the road, and we all have our concerns. I think we share a lot of the same concerns, and I'm sure that we, have different concerns from each other in other areas. But I think that by looking at this as a crumble rather than a collapse or a fragmentation, it might help you to kind of be able to compartmentalize the different things that could happen, and then compartmentalize and direct your response more effectively in that way. So I think that's it. I talked too much. I didn't get done with this. I'm going to have to finish this on my own while I put up this video. So I hope you have one of your own. Again, blessings to Lone Star and the good people down there. And blessings to you all. Again, it's nice to have you. Welcome to all the new people. And for you new folks, what I always say at the end, and for you old folks, is remember that we prepare well today in order to live well tomorrow. And preparing well means putting thought into it. Think about what exactly is it you need to prepare for. And it's not just one thing. It's all the different things. So wherever you are in that process, good luck. Do more. Do 10 times more, because I think times are coming that we're going to need it. But you all have a good night, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.